address is Anna Nicole Smith's house. There's a stalker there banging on her window.
A pop icon's boyfriend crosses the line from love to obsession.
He was screaming and yelling, then told her that he would be coming over packing.
They sure go to a lot of trouble to drive me crazy.
On the other side of town, a choir girl is terrorized by a stranger's advances.
There was the heavy breathing or rubber sounds, screaming sounds.
Here you have a girl, a young girl, who had lived a fairly sheltered life, and then this pervert focuses on her.
Hollywood was built on the magnetic power of a famous face. But sometimes the pull is too strong, and a fan's adoration can become a stalker's obsession.
What these celebrity stalkers want is the notoriety. These are people who are absolute losers and need some type of recognition in their life. And they don't draw that line between killing someone, hurting someone, stalking someone. They just want to be noticed.
Rhonda Saunders has dedicated her career to putting stalkers behind bars. One of her many high-profile victims was playmate turned reality TV star Anna Nicole Smith.
Anna Nicole Smith is a personality well known here in Hollywood.
Anna, get dirty with me!
When Anna Nicole was in her 20s, she was dancing at a stripper's bar, and this was in Texas. And it was there that she met a multi-millionaire, J. Howard Marshall. And he was in his 80s at the time. He asked her to marry him, and she accepted.
Within a year, Marshall died, leaving Anna Nicole a whopping $88 million, until a bitter court battle with Marshall's son saw the decision overturned. But Anna Nicole's fame continued to rise as Playmate of the Year and the star of her own reality show.
I asked my son one time, I said, who would you say watches this Anna Nicole reality show? And he said, every fraternity in the state watches Anna Nicole every single week. She was kind of like an icon for young men. They were fascinated by her.
911 emergency operator 661.
But one man's fascination turned into obsession.
This address is Anna Nicole Smith's house. There's a stalker there banging on her window.
Anna Nicole's stalking ordeal started when she went on a blind date with 34-year-old Mark Hatton.
Anna Nicole and Mark got together through Mark's sister, Jackie.
It was probably not the smartest thing for me to introduce a friend to a family member, just in case anything went wrong. I was like, oh no, you're not gonna meet her. And no, you're not gonna meet her, kind of thing. And he was like, please, please, please. I'm like, oh, I don't know, Mark, I don't even know if she'd like you.
And as in most relationships, at first it was ideal.
They were just like kissy face, lovey-dovey, baby talk, everything that you'd want in a relationship. It was cute. I thought it was awesome.
I don't think Anna knew what she was really getting into when she started having a relationship with Mark Hatton.
Within a couple of weeks, Hatton became obsessed with Anna Nicole and would spend hours drawing pictures of them together and writing love letters.
According to Anna Nicole, it was never love between her and Mark Haddon. He really didn't have any real feelings towards her.
I think to him it was a big turn on, somebody that had a bigger status than him and that was so beautiful. I mean, what guy wouldn't love a playmate, especially a playmate of the year?
For 3 months, their affair continued. But then, things went disastrously wrong.
It started with one fight.
Haddon flew into an absolute rage and had a knife, and he put the knife to Anna Nicole's throat. He then grabbed her gun that she kept in the bedstand next to the bed and was holding the gun, waving it around and threatening to kill himself. And somehow or other, she managed to get him out of the house, locked the door behind him, and was just hoping and praying that he wasn't going to come back.
But Mark Haddon did come back.
They sure go to a lot of trouble to drive me crazy.
Former playmate Anna Nicole Smith had started dating her friend's brother, Mark Haddon.
They were just little lovebirds from the start. They just were totally smitten.
But over the next 3 months, the relationship became increasingly unstable.
Both of these people were very volatile. So during the 6 weeks or 3 months or however long it lasted, a lot of screaming and yelling and fighting going on between the two of them.
The last few weeks, it definitely unraveled. It definitely fell apart.
Then, one night, their constant arguing escalated out of control. Concerned not only for her own safety, but also for her teenage son, Anna Nicole ended the affair.
The next day, the door was locked after he left, and he wasn't allowed back. When you are a mother and you have a child and you have to be the protector of your home and your family, you're going to do whatever you need to do in order to make that happen.
Anna Nicole hoped that would be the end of her problems. But it was only the beginning.
Message saved.
I miss you a lot. I wanted to live with you. I wanted to kiss you. Because I was missing you when I woke it up.
Mark Haddon's stalking campaign had begun.
He continuously called her. He had Jackie, his sister, call her.
I was missing you. I was missing Mom. It made me feel better if you kissed me on the forehead.
And he kept calling, and it got to the point she refused to answer the phone.
Haddon was leaving messages 2 or 3 times a day.
Please answer the phone, Lou. Please. Please answer it, my little bush.
End of message.
Then, Haddon started turning up at Anna Nicole's house.
He left notes, he left pictures in her backyard. It was sort of him saying to her, I can get to you whenever I want. You said you don't want me here, but here's this picture. So he was ever present.
Anna Nicole began to dread what Haddon would do next.
He would keep coming by the house. He would prowl her residence. He would peek through windows, make endless numbers of phone calls, threaten her when he couldn't get his way. So clearly, this goes well beyond the normal cooling off period that we would see in a relationship gone sour, and it's clearly obsessive behavior.
She was very, very frightened because she knew how volatile Mark Haddon could be.
When you're doing a threat assessment on any sort of case, you have to look at the history in order to project what they're capable of doing in the future. And certainly Mark Hatton was somebody that we would be very concerned about. He's had a history of problems in every relationship that he's been involved in. He's had a history of violent acts. 2 previous relationships, there were reported incidents of domestic violence.
Hatton was twice divorced. His sister Jackie said he had a drug habit that made him increasingly unpredictable.
I do think of my brother as someone that had really clouded judgment because of a lot of illegal substances. He would be somebody you'd want as your friend, but you would not want him as your enemy. Because when he's on a substance, he just goes, just a snap. Some people have this kind of behavior. It's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. That's the best way I can explain it.
I need to talk to you. This sure is going to a lot of trouble to drive me crazy. Have a perky, fishy kissy for you, too. Goes like this.
He really wasn't in love with Anna. He was in love with her notoriety. He was selling his story to the media about being Anna Nicole's sex slave. And when she kicked him out and this relationship was going to be over, he saw it, this source of income drying up.
At the time, Hatton was unemployed and broke. Meanwhile, Anna Nicole remained silent, hoping to avoid bad publicity. But as her ex-lover became more persistent, she turned to the police for help.
On several occasions, the police had been called out to Miss Smith's residence and encountered Mr. Hatton in her backyard or on her property. And he was able to convince them that he was her boyfriend, that this was a lover's spat, that he belonged at the location. Consequently, no arrests were made, no reports were taken.
And the police just told him, well, maybe you better go away for a little while. And he finally left the premises. But he was back. He was back within a day or two. And she could not get rid of him, no matter what she said, no matter what she did.
For nearly 2 years, Hatton had harassed Anna Nicole. Then, one night, he reached breaking point.
He came over to her house, was banging on her door, and just about a half hour previous to that had actually called her on the phone, told her that if I can't have you, no one else can, and then told her that he would be coming over packing. I think to anybody who's ever watched TV or a movie, you know what that means. And she was terrified that he'd be coming over with a gun this time.
Anna Nicole was terrified and called her attorney and friend, Howard Stern. Stern dialed 911.
No, an emergency operator 357. Hi, 357, CHP with a 911 transfer. Apparently this address is Anna Nicole Smith's house. There's a stalker there banging on her window.
He was banging on the door again, and he went to the side of the house, and he was screaming and yelling, and Anna was terrified.
Let me get her attorney on the line. Hold on. Okay, Howard, tell the LAPD what's going on.
There's a guy named Mark who's a stalker of Anna Nicole Smith standing in her backyard outside her window.
And her assistant Kim was there, and her son. And they locked themselves in the bedroom, and Anna got her gun, but they were huddled there.
Okay, sir, we'll send an officer out there, okay? Father suspect are now 11923 Hard 6th Street.
Hatton is still there banging on the door, going to the side of the house, banging on the window.
Kimmy called the neighbor and said, we need you to come over here. We have an intruder in the backyard.
Yet neighbor Renee Navarro didn't realize the danger he was about to face.
This is where Anna Nicole lived. There was a person that was standing there, and he had the gate open. So I told him, what the hell are you doing here? And I recognized him because I had seen him previously, one other time, I knew who to look for.
Rene Navarro really believed that he could just talk to Mark Haddon and defuse the situation. That he could tell Haddon, look, the police are coming, why don't you leave her alone? Only it didn't work out that way.
He said, oh, F it. And then he just turned around and clocked me right in the temple. And I went down. I crawled away towards the pavement where the pool was, and then I stood up because I was trying to get on my feet so I could get out of there. And the next thing I know is I saw a foot coming at me. I guess he kicked my hand, both hands.
The guy got up and he ran to the gate to get back out.
I went to open the gate, and I thought something was wrong. I don't know if somebody was on this side. I couldn't open the gate.
He ran to it and pushed it, and then it slammed back on him, and he got clipped there. And supposedly my brother, what he said was he picked up the cinder block that was on the ground.
And he picked it up over his head, and he was coming at me. And when he did that, I just went right towards him. I said, you can kill me. I said, I've made my peace with the Lord. I says, but you, everybody knows who you are.
Anna Nicole was terrified. She needed to get help for Renee. Frantic, she asked her friend Stern to make another call to 911.
There's a stalker who was outside in Nicole's bedroom window, and he just beat somebody up. He beat up a neighbor.
Okay, he just beat up someone right now?
Yeah.
And the person that he assaulted, do they need a paramedic?
I think yes.
By the time police arrived, Haddon had disappeared. Instead, they found Anna Nicole terrified and Renee badly beaten.
Here you have a man who's trying to help. He's not the object of Mark Haddon's anger, Anna Nicole is. And yet, Mark Haddon saw him as an obstacle, the obstacle standing between him and Anna, and took out all of his anger and violently assaulted Renee.
Investigators tracked Haddon down. He was arrested and charged with making criminal threats, assault and battery, and stalking. The case was handed over to the Threat Management Unit.
In my opinion, Mark Haddon could be a very dangerous man. He truly believes that he had done nothing wrong. He felt that he was charismatic enough to convince everybody that he was completely innocent in this whole matter, and that the real blame lay on Anna Nicole Smith, the people that surround her, the police department, the prosecution, everybody else remotely involved in this case, everyone but Mark Haddon himself.
But at the preliminary hearing, Haddon's true colors started to show.
Haddon had an attitude, I think, against all women. He really devalued women in general. And here he was in court, not only with Anna Nicole as a victim, but the judge was a woman, I believe the bailiff was a woman, and I was the prosecution. And he also thought himself very suave. Women were very stupid, that they would buy any story he told.
I'm not a bad person. I've basically walked away from this fight, and I've never used a weapon on anybody in my life in a fight. And everything I've ever been in has been like a very misdemeanor, very minor altercation. If I have to go to prison, you know, it's your call. It's all in your hands.
Anna Nicole would have to appear in court to make the case against Haddon. Rhonda and her colleague Dave Stewart handled the case.
I handled the preliminary hearing, and I had to bring her in to testify. And she was extremely cooperative. She also managed to convey the fear that she felt for herself and for her son and for the people who worked for her.
But their biggest weapon was Rene Navarro.
Mr. Navarro was a completely uninvolved third party, a good Samaritan that came to the rescue and was ultimately beat up as a result of his interest in helping Anna Nicole Smith, and his testimony was quite powerful. It goes well beyond a simple argument at a person's house when you sustain the injuries that Mr. Navarro sustained.
Even with Renee's testimony, the stalking charge was dismissed. Since Anna Nicole had been reluctant to press charges against Hatton, most of his actions over a 2-year period were not documented.
The fact that Anna Nicole hadn't reported the knife incident right away is problematic. In a stalking case, you need to show a pattern of conduct, and part of that pattern is documentation.
It was now up to the jury to decide Hatton's fate on the 3 other charges. For 2 days, they deliberated.
Ultimately, Mr. Hatton was convicted of 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and 1 count of making a felony criminal threat.
The guilty verdict was a victory, but was only some compensation for Renee Navarro, who would live with the trauma forever.
I just couldn't get myself together. I just couldn't pick myself back up. But I ended up losing my house, my business, and my second wife. I'm just putting the pieces back together. It's just going to take time.
As a prosecutor, I very rarely get to see the inside of a place like this, but Mark Hatton did. And because of his obsession with Anna Nicole and also what he did to Renee Navarro, he was sentenced to state prison for over 7 years.
More than 15 years ago, Rhonda was instrumental in creating the Threat Management Unit, which tries to protect stalking victims like Anna Nicole. Today, they handle up to 200 cases a year in the city of Los Angeles alone. As the woman who stalks the stalkers, Rhonda Saunders knows it's not just celebrities that are in danger.
Anyone can be a stalker, and anyone can be a victim. It doesn't matter if you're a celebrity, if you're an average person, if you're male or you're female. Everyone is vulnerable.
Maria Noel was a normal teenager who sang and worked at her local church in the city of Glendale, California, until she became the random target of a depraved stalker.
I've handled a lot of stalking cases, and I wouldn't say he was the most dangerous stalker I've ever handled. However, he probably was one of the cruelest.
I was really, really scared of getting raped.
What he did to that young girl was just so unforgivable.
It was terrifying.
Maria Noel's life of innocence was about to be shattered. College freshman Maria Noel Solgati lived with her parents and younger brother in Glendale, California.
When I first met Maria Noel, she was 18 years old, just a strikingly beautiful young woman. Amazing grace. She had led her life in a very good way. She sung in church.
When I was about 15, 16, I realized that God had given me this talent, this gift to share the gospel with other people through singing.
But her innocent life, as she knew it, was about to fall apart.
I would get 1 or 2 phone calls a day. Mainly hang-ups. Just, I would pick up. The other person would hang up. I'd hear the click. And then it started. The number of calls became much more numerous. I would get 20, 30 phone calls a day, and at night there were times where we had to just unplug the phones because 2, 3, 4 in the morning the phone would be ringing.
But then the calls became more sexual.
There was the heavy breathing or just, you know, rubber sounds, screaming sounds. At one point, he would call with masturbation tips, all kinds of really gross things.
This was very frightening because now they knew there is this person. They knew what the objective was. It was a sexual objective.
I was really, really scared of getting raped. And that was the fear that I had, or him hurting my family. It was terrifying.
The feeling that we most had was fear. We
were afraid.
We were afraid
scary.
that something bad happened to her.
Here you have a girl, a young girl, who had lived a fairly sheltered life, who had lived a very good life. And then this pervert focuses on her.
It was horrifying for her family as well. They couldn't protect her. The incessant calls continued day after day for an entire month.
And then it became absolutely terrifying when they started to receive letters.
The stalker now had her address.
My parents received the first letter, and they decided not to share it with me so it wouldn't scare me. Knowing that he knew where I lived, it was frightening. It was so scary, and it was terrible.
The parents of Marie Noel realized, we need the police. We have to bring the police in.
I received the initial report. It was assigned to me, and I read it and found out that she had received several phone calls at her residence. She could clearly hear what sounded like adults committing sex acts upon one another. My immediate advice was for her and her family to get a trap set on her residence phone so that when the phone calls did come in, they could be recorded, and the telephone company would have an opportunity to try to trace them back to the location where they originated from.
About a week and a half later, I received another one, and this one I opened because I picked up the mail that day.
While the telephone company had a tap on the line, a second letter arrived and was even more explicit.
The author of the letter described certain sex acts that he commits upon himself while thinking of her.
They were blonde porn models that, I guess with the computer, he had gotten my name like written on their bodies and stuff like that.
Both letters were dusted for prints.
I was explained by the forensic technicians that there were smudges and partial smudges, but nothing that they could lift to have a positive identification on a suspect.
6 weeks had passed. The stalker's confidence was increasing. He appeared to be playing games to throw the investigation off course.
What the suspect did was, in some of his letters, he would make statements about how he watches the victim every day at school. I know where you are, you don't know me.
I didn't know who I could trust. I didn't know if it was a friend. I don't know if it was somebody. I had no idea who it was. I didn't know if it was a professor.
The strain was getting to Maria Noel.
I'd never had a boyfriend before. I'd never gone out with anybody. So it couldn't be an ex-boyfriend or someone who had who had it in for me or something. I couldn't sleep at night. It didn't matter where I went, I was afraid. Even in my own home, I was afraid.
She quit school, she quit her job. It just destroyed her life because she didn't know.
Everybody was a possible suspect.
Then, another letter arrived, but this time, her stalker was getting even closer.
The third letter, or the package, did not come through the U.S. mail. It was hand-delivered to the victim's residence. When the suspect threw it, it opened up partially, and Maria Noel found it. She could see that there were several items protruding from the open end, and she immediately recognized the items to be pornographic material.
This meant that the person actually knew where they lived, had actually come onto their property, violated their privacy.
That's when we got really scared. Right there and then, I was just freaked out.
She was terrified. She was crying all the time. And her parents felt so helpless because they couldn't help her.
Maria Noel knew that the stalker could return at any time. Then, 3 weeks after the phone tap was set, the stalker makes a fatal error. He places several consecutive calls from the same phone. The tap picks up an address in West LA, 15 miles from Maria Noel's home.
I was advised by the phone company that 2 of the threatening phone calls came from this address and apartment at this building here.
Finally, investigators had their first positive lead.
I came down here with an investigative crew. We set up a surveillance for 2 days, and after 2 days we learned that an elderly female by the name of Mildred Cooper lived here.
Yet Mildred Cooper lived alone and had no male relatives that could have made the calls. It was another dead end.
It had a devastating effect on Marie Noel and her entire family. They just became so afraid to leave their house. They lived in constant fear.
Even though the case was going cold, Detective Osborne refused to give up.
Thought I'd call them to see how they were doing and to see how they were holding up under the stress of this investigation. And I called the residents and talked to Marie Noel, and while we were talking on the phone, she told me that she had to pick up the other line.
I had the call waiting, went off. It was him.
She said, "Officer Osborne, please help me. This has to come to an end."
Detective Osborne was like, hang the phone up this very moment, turn off your answering machine, don't pick up any calls, nothing, just we're gonna do an emergency trace.
Can the police track the stalker's call before it's too late? Detectives were finally closing in on Maria Noel Salgati's stalker. While she was on the phone with him, police ran an emergency trace.
I explained to her to keep the caller on the line so that I could contact the phone company and get a trace.
A cop came to the house and he was like, we're tracing it, be careful, don't pick up the phone, don't do anything.
I became excited at that point because I could see as an investigator that this is an important lead.
And I was like, please get this done. If we do an emergency one, then he'll still be there when we find out where he's calling from and we can catch him. And it had to be done and over with.
The phone company called me back a few minutes later and told me that the trap was successful, that the phone call had come from a local residence in Glendale, actually not even a mile away.
They had a location and it was in the area. It was close to my house.
Detective Osborne went immediately to the address with a team of officers for backup.
We went to the apartment, knocked on the door. A gentleman opened the door.
And what they found was very shocking. Pornography all over the place. Pornographic videos, the ones he had played to Marie Noel over the telephone. On his computer, more pornography. Before they could even get out a few words, he said, "I did it, it's me, I'm sick."
Well, he was arrested, placed under arrest based on the information I had and his Admission that he was the person responsible for stalking and for terrorizing the victim in this case, and brought to the Glendale Police Department.
Detective Osborne took him in for questioning. The stalker was 31-year-old Jolly Jet Alcerbar, a caregiver from the Philippines.
What's her name? I don't even know. You don't even know? You've been sending her letters. Do you love her? You tell her 100 times in these letters that you love her. Yeah, I know. And you want to have sex with her? She's sick. It's sick. Well, I know that, but why are you doing this?
He had seen her singing in church, he liked her voice, and decided that he was going to conduct an experiment.
I'd never seen him before, I don't think I have. It was a gentleman that had been attending our church. He was from our congregation.
He would sit there week after week, watching her fall apart, deteriorate, lose weight, become shaky because of this junk, this horrible thing that he was doing to her, these things he was sending her.
He wanted to see if his actions could actually make her crumble.
And the power she was just like an experimental animal in a cage to him.
Who would think that somebody attending church with her would put her through such hell?
I was just so confused and hurt.
I thought that the church was the safest place.
I was relieved at the same time that it wasn't someone I knew and it wasn't somebody that I had trusted. It was just some random person who was sick.
Detective Osborne discovered that Alcerbar had been working as a nurse's aide for the elderly lady whose address had been turned up by the first phone tap.
Mr. Alcerbar came to this location to assist Mrs. Cooper, who was living here in her apartment, and while he was here, he took the opportunity to use Mrs. Cooper's telephone and make 2 threatening phone calls to our victim.
Jolly Jet Alcerbar thought he was very, very smart, covering his trail.
He explained to me that he would use gloves when writing the letters, and when he walked to the mailbox to mail them, he would actually keep them in his shirt and hold them in his shirt so that his hands would never make contact with the actual paper.
So he thought he was very clever, but he did get caught.
Alcerbar was charged with stalking.
Jolly Jet Alcerbar wound up pleading no contest because when he saw the victim sitting there ready to testify against him, he realized that a jury would convict him immediately.
He was sentenced to 3 years in state prison.
It's an extremely important case because it's one of these cases that could really happen to anybody. And to identify the person and to hold them to justice and to make them pay for their actions and to put an end to it and give this young lady back her life and her freedom and her peace of mind was very, very rewarding.
You know, there's a lot of sick people out there and we have to learn to help them if there's a way that we can. And it taught me to be more careful, definitely.
Marie Noel has gone on with her life, and she's engaged to be married. And she really put her life together. And hopefully this experience won't scar her.
After serving his sentence, Alcerbar was released from prison, but failed.
Tomorrow night, The Sopranos' Steve Schirripa tells the story of the model wife who became a monster. A brand new series on murder for hire, Nothing Personal, continues with a shocking betrayal at 10. Next tonight on CI, mass murder in Colorado at the hands of the Columbine killers.
He's still behind bars and due to be released in 2010.
All 50 states now have some type of a stalking law. And this shows that stalking, it's not something that just happens in California to celebrities. This is something that happens to normal, average people. The more people know about stalking, the more they understand, and the more police are trained in this area, the better results we're going to see.